Good morning. My name is Lee McLaughlin. I'm the Centre Lead for Tech Partnership, and I'm joined here by Vanessa Grant, our Maths Motivator. So the question that we're looking at this year was, are there techniques that can enable students to become self-sufficient in re-engaging with their GCSE maths studies? So yeah, like Josh said, it's a continuation of the CFEM research that we've been doing based around barriers to maths education. Our primary focus is vocational level 3, because they can get onto a level 3 course, yet they can't pass a level 2 course, which is maths. So what's going on there? Okay, so just a sort of quick run through of the cohort that we were dealing with this year. So this year our maths department had a cohort of 809 students. C4Me, our little project, worked with 170 students overall, 78 of which only worked with a motivator and 22 who worked with both the maths motivator and a maths coach, which we'll be presenting about the maths coach side on Friday, which is our Action Research 1. So for November Resit, we had 4 out of 38 students at the time who passed, and all 4 had worked with our maths motivator. Our predominant focus was based with level 3 students, but we wanted to make sure our full cohort benefited from our services. So we had 42 level 1 students, 20 of which worked with a motivator, 82 level 2 students, 43 of which worked with a motivator, and 36 level 3 students, 15 of which worked with a maths motivator. We found that level 3 students were the toughest group to intervene with. There was 140 level 3 students overall, but we found that they were running on full timetables. Many of them had work or work experience, so weren't in college much in their spare time. And a lot of them were just disinterested in the services that we were providing, but we managed to see who we could. So this is a snapshot of we called it our master tracker. So we wanted to be able to check on students' progress as and where we could share the progress that they'd been looking at so far. We've got a comment section at the side. You'll see that we've got lots of little comments. So, started 2 weeks before the exam, when the exam pressure starts hitting them and whatnot. So we based the RAG scale on the student's initial assessment. We didn't want to off-put them by judging them from a tag point of view, because as we know, tags not as robust as an exam. So we wanted to make sure that students had a fair chance and could see the progress that they'd made from the start to the finish of this year alone. And we also wanted staff to be able to see it so they could see that they were working well with the students and that the students are progressing based on this year.
We have faced some issues this year. We started off with 2 motivators, but unfortunately one's been on long-term sickness since Christmas. So it has just been me pretty much working flat out, running around, but seeing as many as I can and getting everyone wanting motivation support, so no one was left out. We all rallied together. I wrote Lee in sometimes for discussions to help me, and me and Nathan worked together, who is our maths coach. We've got the Maths Anxiety Rating Scale, which is the Mars survey. We began our journey by booking in, after many trial and error, students through the Microsoft booking forms. Staff could book learners in, we could book learners in, students could book learners in. It was important that the learner, though, was seen outside of lesson time. We didn't want to encourage students skipping lessons for a 25-minute appointment with myself, which we run over 4 consecutive weeks. So we had a few timetabling issues trying to fit the students in for that time when they was in college. We started off by getting the students to complete a baseline Mars survey based on the Richardson and Sewins Mars scale that had been shortened by the Mathematics Anxiety Research Group. The survey is 23 questions long and gave us an idea where to start. At the final meeting, we also asked students to do a sign-off survey, where the exact same questions we asked us to see if progress had been made in the one-to-one sessions.
So what we found from this research and the survey was that actually in the maths motivator sessions, what might benefit is being able to talk about maths and being able to go through an exam paper with students to relieve their anxiety. So what we did was we started running exam fit sessions where students could look through a GCSE paper with the motivator, and they could say to her, look, this sort of question is just an absolute barrier to me. I don't attempt them. I always skip past them. And that was Vanessa's opportunity to go, right, what's stressing you out about this exam? Let's break it down. Let's take it right down to the bare essentials of what you need so you can start tackling that. But we'll get more into techniques and whatnot a bit later.
So we developed the motivator pack, which I would take from the first appointment. I would run through it with the student, and first of all, I would ask the students just to write a little paragraph about themselves. Books full of tips, activities, all centered around maths anxiety, students' learning practice, what did work well, what didn't work well, and we basically worked through with students to find out what was personal suited to them. First session, the learner would make the notes, write about them. It could be anything from a paragraph. Some wanted to do a drawing, some wanted to tell me about the home life. It did not have to be maths related. We just wanted that open up to get that relationship with them. Unfortunately, sometimes because it is a one-to-one session, students were opening up and a lot of safeguarding issues were being brought to light. So it was a bit difficult sometimes to just keep it focused around maths, because we would go a bit all over the shop, unfortunately. But the students were great. We would go through it all, work with them, with the departments in the college. So any safeguarding or pastoral concerns that weren't maths, I would instantly refer them on.
So at the back of the Maths Motivator pack, what we did was added a page for local services, just in case a student wanted to talk about something, but they didn't want to talk about it in a college environment where safeguarding will, inevitably be all over it. So we had some signposts for them for our external local services, just in case. So this is our Maths Motivator tracking system. So we've blurred out any student names, details, that kind of thing, GDPR. But what we wanted was a way to capture what had been happening in the meetings. We wanted to capture students' attendance to see if we were having any impact on their attendance. The attendance just looked at maths lessons, but we found that through meeting with Vanessa and the student being able to speak to a member of staff well, and have an open communication, we were able to break down barriers within their vocational and maths classroom where students weren't wanting to ask for any help or anything like that, because they saw their teacher as like a bad person. The bad man who's making me do maths was a quote directly from a student. But we would just reassure the students that actually we're people too, we're here for you. Anything that you need, speak to us, speak to your tutors. If you don't want to speak to your tutors, speak to us. We can put things into place for you. And it worked eventually to the point where, all this morning we've had students knocking on our office door, even though they're supposed to be finished, because they want to come say bye to their tutors. They want to come say bye to us. We've really helped them open up and make relationships with their teachers to get what they need out of it. So this is our tracking system. So we record all meetings, attendance, and staff attached to the student and identify barriers and the support that we put in place. So we've got a section where it's identify barriers. So that's what we've identified the student is struggling with. The support then comes next. So what we've spoken about, what's worked with them, what hasn't worked with them, and then any outcomes. So for the outcomes part, we speak with their maths tutors and we speak with their vocational tutors as well to see if there's been an improvement in attendance, in behaviour, in just general getting involved with the lessons and speaking to tutors. And it's come out quite nicely. So this year, the maths and English departments in our college have taken a completely different approach. So they're now looking at facilitated learning. So we wanted to have a chat with students as well as we could. So we made a little survey and we were asking students what benefited them the most and what benefited them least. Within our motivated sessions, we found that students weren't exactly happy with online-based learning. And this obviously stemmed from COVID, where they've had the last 2 years being self-sufficient, self-driven. They've had to wake up to attend an online meeting, to do their lessons. And I don't know about you guys, but we were thin on the ground for a lot of those lessons. But now the students feel like they're back in the classroom, they're being put in front of a laptop. They don't really see the point in attending lessons. So that was our opportunity to say, if this is not how you're happy learning, let us know, let your tutor know, and we can change something around. So quite a few times we spoke to students and we asked them, how do you like learning? Some of them would be like, oh, workbooks, I just want a presentation delivered to me. So we'd speak to their maths tutors, and by the next lesson, their entire learning would have changed around, and the students were much happier and able to get on. So the first question we asked the students was to identify what learning that they had had within their lessons. And then the second question, this one, is what benefited them the most. So we can see that 20 more students had answered that standard delivery is better than Century Tech, but Century Tech received 35 more positive responses than workbooks, which was the third most beneficial to them. And on the flip side to that, we asked them what the least beneficial for them was, because we wanted to make sure that the information that we were getting from the students, just even our small cohort, represented what the main thoughts and ideas for the rest of the students were as well. So we can see here that 67 students had outwardly reported that they found Century to be the least beneficial to them. It's the whole sitting in front of a laptop, again, like they have done for the last 2 years. They feel like they weren't getting the information in. They had YouTube open, they had ebooks open, they had Netflix open, and when the teacher comes around, they would just flip over. So that was great for us, because then we could intervene and be like, right, your student's not learning, they're telling us this. Keep an eye on them, change it up for them, and it helped loads. So we noted that students didn't feel compelled to attend maths lessons if they were going to be shoved in front of a laptop and left for an hour and a half, which we know our tutors are going around, they're facilitating, they're spending their time where they could. But if that was the morale of the students, then it's going to cause disengagement within all lessons.
So the identified barriers. What I tended to do at the beginning of the year and a few times throughout the year was go in lessons and basically say, who didn't want to come today? Who hates maths? And they all put their hand up, and I'm like, right, that's perfect. We'll arrange a little meeting and we'll find out why you hate maths, and we'll identify your barriers. So during my initial appointments, we'd have discussions and would create an action plan. The barriers that have mostly came out to me, a lot stem from early negative experiences in school. The teachers punished them for not getting maths right, so that's created this anxiety and this barrier, and their fixed mind is they cannot move past that. Also, they felt they'd had enough online with COVID, so they felt like they was ready for an actual bit of teacher delivery. Old school lessons, as some said to me. Old school to me is 1997, but to them, old school, that's fine. With a few large class sizes where health and social care, unfortunately, we had a few groups merge. Because they've been on their own, that set a bit of anxiety and a few barriers within the class. A lot as well that are on level 3 and then have the realisation they need maths to progress on to the next level of their career, like university or level 3, level 2. And then the panic sets in, they're like, help me, I need to pass, the university won't let me in. There's a few pastoral issues. I've had several students, unfortunately, that have been dealing with bereavement, like close family bereavement, which has hindered their attendance, attainment, all sorts of issues for them. And all of those created the barriers and prevented them, I felt like, from moving on. We needed to build their self-confidence up. So the patterns within the barriers that I found in my one-to-one sessions, there were several patterns really that emerged. Maths anxiety is the most common one, and that can stem from the poor mental health externally, internally within college in the vocational area. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on students' mental health, which has been brought to light in my one-to-one, where they've told me they're not comfortable in the lesson if someone coughs, so then getting themselves all worked up, thinking they're prone to be getting COVID and getting poorly, which is then had that knock-on domino effect on the learning, the attendance, everything goes, creating the more anxiety. A bit added pressure with it being COVID, and the ones that have missed it and have come in at level 3, they've got that added pressure to get it done in a year, so they can progress to university. The negative childhood experiences, that's a common theme amongst them. The teacher said this, the teacher said that. I wasn't very good at maths, my friends was good at maths. I felt like I had to pretend, just to pretend I was the same level as my friends. So a bit of peer pressure has come up. And just the ability. So if we've got in the same class, if we've got students that are on a grade 3 working to a grade 4 and students that are on a grade 1 working to a grade 2, it can be a bit overwhelming for them sometimes to cater for all levels within one class. And I would say the overall pattern is they do prefer the teacher-led learning rather than online. The students that preferred the online were like the Dig and the media students, where that's their bag, computers. We did notice, unfortunately, some students were coming and telling us they didn't need their maths because universities would accept them regardless this year because of COVID. They didn't need the maths or English, but it led to a bit of lack of motivation, lack of attendance because they was putting their effort into the vocational area. This was massively demotivating for them. We struggled a few times, the remarks, and I won't ever have to use maths, which we know is strictly not true.
What went well?
So the techniques that I've been using with the students, in a generic capacity, I use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I use that to enable the students to visually see how they can become a fully functioning person within maths. So it could be like attending the maths lessons, keeping up with their online work, doing the homework, making sure they're confident before they move on to the next subject area in maths. One of my favourite lines I say to the students is, you won't run a marathon without training. Same applies for a mock exam. You've got to train your brain, you've got to practice. Look after yourself. A bit of, you wouldn't let your phone go dead. Make sure you eat, make sure you sleep, make sure you look after yourself. We do a lot on the fixed and mind first growth set, changing that I can attitude so I can, allowing students to see their personal development over the 4-week sessions. I start off, I have like a picture of a ladder in my room and we start on the bottom step, and every week we like point out to what steps we're moving up to. A lot of the students, once I can relate and they've got all the Focus 15 Maths for Life posters in their area, I found relating maths to their vocational area really helped that. Oh, I do use maths in actual real life. I will need it when I leave college, sort of moment. On the run up to mocks and exams, like as Lee mentioned, I ran the exam fit workshops, and a lot of that was just simply showing not get overwhelmed if you are, what to do if you are overwhelmed, to stop, calm yourself down, 7-11 breaths, count the ceiling tiles, lots of little places, swan legs, wiggle your toes, popped in place for and mainly large worded questions, just breaking them down, highlighting, showing them how to take the relevant information, not being overwhelmed by the question like a 5-marker where it's a big paragraph, just getting the information they needed. And I felt like once I was attending these, it was easing their exam anxiety. There was actually some of them were looking forward to the exam rather than dreading it, thinking, oh, I've got this in the bag. And I also gave advice on how long to spend on each question, to not waste your time getting your amount, like 4 marks you couldn't do, where you could have picked 20 up from the rest of the paper on skills, like work to their strengths and weaknesses for the individuals. Our overall attendance pre-motivator were appointments were 78%, and it jumped up to 91% of the students that saw me for my one-to-ones. So I found that really worked.
Super. Just a quick heads up, a couple of minutes, guys. Yep.
Okay, cool. Nice.
The resources that I used were fidget toys. We didn't want noisy ones, so I found these little marble meshes, a lot of them just to keep in their hands in lessons or in my one-to-ones, really helped that anxiety. They didn't feel like they needed to become overwhelmed. It just refocuses the mind. I also got certain students to write positive affirmations, and then when they was feeling overwhelmed in lessons, whip them out, read them to give themselves a bit more reassurance. And techniques, what didn't go as well. Our other motivator had a psychology background, and She liked the handbrake model. I've not got a psychology background, mine's mental health and counselling. So for me, that didn't really work. So we didn't carry on with that.
When you've only got 25 minutes for the student as well, explaining a full process and what the handbrake model does, it was just too heavy for us to keep going on with that one.
And we didn't want to delve too deep, dragging up more than we needed to with the appointments. And then our student feedback, we asked 20 learners random to complete a short survey if they understand what we've been doing with them and was it actually useful to them. No learner answered negatively about the services, and they were all thankful of our support. And these are some of the actual comments, word for word, that we received from students via Teams messages. Thank you so much for all yours and Nathan's help. I think I might have passed this year. Sorry I didn't see you Wednesday to let you know my exam went. It went really well. I'm thinking, hoping I got a grade 4. I actually used that stuff you showed me and it stopped me in the exam. Counted the ceiling tiles. I usually would have walked out. He was a real lad's lad, didn't want to do it, but actually used the techniques and listened.
Yeah.
Just thank you and just really appreciate our help.
Oh, sorry, it's frozen on me. There we go. So any recommendations that we would say to people is to make sure that there's dedicated time in lessons for, if you had something like in this capacity, for a maths motivator to share what services are available. And it's useful at the beginning of every term because students forget a lot of things. Regular class drop-ins throughout each term would be helpful as well, and more consistent bookings from vocational areas. Our main focus next year is to get vocational areas more in tune with what we're doing. It's worked well this year with certain ones, but we want to make sure we branch out and then we're working well across the college as a whole. Quarterly exam fit session. So basically anytime that there's a mock exam coming up, we want to run a couple weeks worth of exam fits for students to give them a bit more of a solid ground. And a closer working relationship with the maths coach. We found that when we merged the two together in the same room, the maths coach was able to help with the curriculum side of things, while the motivator could intervene with anybody who was visibly struggling with things. So our next steps for next year's CFIRM project is to hopefully deliver motivation CPD to faculty areas and on site to promote positivity around maths. We'd also like to do that around network partners and wider network as well. So delivering a CPD package around motivation engagement, with trialing our maths motivator handbook, which is something we're working on this summer. So just a little small pocket book for teachers to be able to pull out. They can see that a student's disengaged, right? What techniques can I employ with them? What can I use? Obviously, every student's different, so not everything's going to work with everybody, but it will be a whole bunch of techniques that teachers can use and then take note of what works with them correctly. We also want to take part in Teach the Teacher Week. So it's something that we do here on site where our maths and our English teams go off into area for a week and they work with their students in their practical environment. We'd like to get the motivator and the maths coach involved with that as well, so they can be more of a staple throughout the student's school journey. And if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to give us a message.